Hey everybody, it's Shelby Forsythia with another Thursday live video, and today we're going to be talking about the 6 grief myths, and these are from the Grief Recovery Method Handbook, which is right over here. Let's see, I can actually pull it off my shelf for you. The Grief Recovery Handbook, this is the 20th Anniversary Expanded Edition, which just means they've added a little bit more content in the book to feature things like growing up with alcoholic parents, things like PTSD, which are becoming more upfront and relevant grief issues in our world today. So I'll take you back over to the desk now that you've seen the book. The 6 grief myths are just one element of the Grief Recovery Method Handbook, and I would highly, highly recommend that you pick this up. This is the book that started or kick-started the coming back process for me, which I talk about a little bit on my podcast, and it helped me so much with my grief that I'm now certified to teach the methodology that is listed in the book. Okay, so let's talk about the 6 grief myths. So I have them listed either below or above. I'm not sure where they show up on Facebook Live video. But there are 6 myths that society, our parents, our friends, our family, the people that we know and love perpetuate that people think to be true about grief, but definitely are not. And I took a poll in my private Facebook group, which is the Grief Growers Garden, and you can join that just by going to the top of your Facebook page and Googling or searching Grief Growers Garden. You can find our group and join us. I posted the 6 grief myths in there and asked people to report on which ones they've heard, which ones they've experienced, and the number 1 grief myth that people heard about in the group was keep busy. So the first grief myth is keep busy. And this is the feeling, this is the mentality and the societal belief that if we keep ourselves distracted, if we keep ourselves busy at times when we're grieving, that somehow all of our action on the external side of our life will remedy the grief and the pain that we're feeling inside. But the truth of it is that grief is not about anything that's happening on the outside of us. It's about our emotions and our mental state and where our soul is. So things like keeping busy after the end of the day, after doing all that grocery shopping or socializing or partying or working or hanging out with friends, you still come home to a heart that's broken. You're still left with a heart that has not been mended by all of the action that you've taken during the day. Certainly doing things like keeping busy can put you into meditative places, such as things like gardening, such as things like running sometimes can be helpful and even aid you in coping with your grief. But the mentality of keep busy as a remedy for the fact that you're grieving is not helpful, and that's why it's a myth that needs to be shattered. So that's the first one. The second one I want to talk about is stay strong, or be strong, or you have to be strong or you can't fall apart. And this one is very, very common in the case of parent loss, and it's usually directed at the oldest child or often the oldest girl in a family, especially if the mother passes away, where you need to be strong for your family now. You need to take on this role. And even in father passing away and son mentalities, is you're the man of the house now. You need to be strong and support your mother or your sisters or your baby brother or whoever. And there's just this general mentality, period, that people need to be strong after a grief event takes place, where there's this fear that grievers have that seems rational in the moment, where if I let myself feel all these emotions, I'm going to fall apart. I'm going to walk over the edge of the abyss, and I'm never going to come back from this. But the thing is, what will allow you to step back into your life again is going into that abyss, because eventually when you fall, you hit bottom, and from the bottom you come back up from that. But so the thing with stay strong is it keeps you walking on the edge of this abyss, and you're looking at it and you're seeing it and you're like, I'm going to fall in there, I'm not going to fall in there, I'm not going to fall in there. When the remedy for grieving, the best thing you can do for yourself when you're grieving is to look into that abyss, is to fall into that abyss, to explore the emotions that grief has presented you with. And so something like Be Strong just encourages you to put on this facade of not showing emotions and not taking the leap into the darkness and the pain that grief has presented you with. But I promise you, and so many other people who are grieving can promise you, that if you stray away from the idea of be strong and you make your own way of delving into your pain, and you recognize that true strength comes from really feeling and digging into your emotions, that's when true healing occurs. So that's the second myth. We're going to go on to the third one now, the third grief myth, which is don't feel bad. And this is kind of a sneakier grief myth, and I elaborate on this a lot more in the podcast episode, which you can find the link below or above. I still don't remember where the links appear, but I elaborate more on this in the podcast episode. But don't feel bad is usually coming at you from the outside, where people are like, don't feel bad, feel this way, or at least it's not this, or it's all right, you can feel this way, but not that way. And it's usually a belief that society holds that negative emotions are not welcome. We are so eager and so willing to tell people things like happy anniversary, happy birthday, so glad you got a promotion, as opposed to I'm so sorry you lost your job. How are you feeling about that? I'm so sorry that you have to move in a couple months. How are you feeling about that? I'm so sorry that your dad just died. How do you feel about that? And there's this dissonance and this disconnect in society about how eager we are to show happy emotions and how unwilling we are to show negative emotions, because we believe that by showing them, they will continue. And so we'll just be stuck in this cycle of negative emotions. But what people forget is emotions are like this all day. So by saying don't feel bad, like don't feel bad about your breakup, there's plenty of fish in the sea. Or don't feel bad about your grandmother dying, she's in a better place now. Like trying to heal people with platitudes of don't feel bad, and even telling them not to cry or not to show tears is a way of dampening the normal human expression of emotion that happens when you're grieving. And if you're living a life of don't feel bad, it's kind of like Be Strong, where you're living a life of stifling yourself and not letting your true emotions and not letting your true self and not letting your true feelings come 100% through. You're dampening an entire half of the human experience. The fourth one I want to go on to this is also on the podcast. All 6 of these are on the podcast episode this week of Coming Back. The fourth one I want to go on to is called Time Heals All. And we've heard this on sitcoms, we've heard this in movies, we've heard this in music, we've heard this in religion, the world over. There's this belief, this myth, this untruth that time is going to do something for your pain. But the tricky thing with time that I teach all of my clients, and what I relay on the podcast as well, is that it's not time that heals, it's what you do with it. And it's really important to see time in its true light. A lot of people say, just give it time, just give it 6 months, just give it a year, just give it till the 10th anniversary and you will feel better. But just giving it to that point in time doesn't create healing for you. It might give you more perspective. You have lived more life since the loss happened and now at this other point in the future, but you have not taken steps to become introspective with your grief and to really sit with it and do something with it. So time by itself has no healing powers. Time just goes by, whether or not you're taking action to come back to your life after grief or you're not. So the myth that time heals, people think that it's been 6 months, why am I not feeling better? It's been a year, why am I not feeling better? And there's just this whole mentality that time is going to do something for us, but time is not magical. We are magical. So what we do with our time in these moments is really what matters and really what propels us forward into healing from our grief. So that was the fourth one. The fifth one I want to go on to is grieve alone. And this one is, I guess, how do I phrase this? This one is most commonly used towards us as children by our parents. If you're going to cry, go to your room. Or being dismissed from the dinner table if you're in a bad mood. And this is kind of a combination of not being allowed to show bad emotions, but if you're going to show bad emotions, you must do it alone. And this is an isolating myth of grief. They all are kind of isolating, but this one is this is like the king of isolation in terms of the grief myths, because grief alone encourages us to isolate ourselves, that no one wants to see our negative emotions, that we do not have permission to share our negative emotions, and that we're not allowed to grieve openly or within groups unless it's socially acceptable, as in the case of like a funeral, memorial, a service that's been set up to create that space. And even then, people are sometimes asked to leave the room, go into the lobby if you're going to cry, go sit in the car while we go to the service, like all kinds of things like that, where showing too much of a negative emotion is frowned upon by society. And so we take this attitude we get told as kids to grieve alone, of going to our rooms when we're sad, and we transmute that into our lives as adults. So when we feel bad, when we feel crappy, what do? We shut ourselves into our apartments, into our townhouses, into our single family homes. We put ourselves in our bedrooms, we put ourselves on our back porches, and we put ourselves on the living room. And we either feel our emotions all by ourselves, which is an incredibly isolating experience, or we just tune them out. Because if no one wants to see our emotions, why should we want to see them either? So this whole experience of grieve alone is not only must you go away when you have negative emotions, but you are not allowed to experience grief as a unit. But here's the thing. One of the most healing aspects of grief is that when we experience it in tandem with other people, with other family members, with other friends, with our communities, in the case of national or international tragedies, it's highly healing to be in these spaces with other people who are also grieving, and to see people cry openly, or to see people share stories and memories openly. These are the things that heal us. We don't heal ourselves by closing ourselves off from the rest of the world. We don't heal ourselves by being dismissed from happy culture because we've had hard times, because we've lost. We don't heal from that. So that is the fifth myth, which is to grieve alone. Grieve alone will do nothing for us unless we're doing something constructive with our solitude. The sixth myth, I'll use 6 fingers, is replace the loss. And this one was the least commented on by my Facebook group, but I know for a fact that everyone has experienced this. If you've ever had a pet, you are familiar with the concept of replace the loss. And it's most commonly used in the cases of pet loss, where if a dog dies, it's don't worry, we'll get you a new dog. If a cat dies, don't worry, we'll go to the shelter and go pick out a new kitten. If a bird dies, a fish dies, a turtle dies, whoever in your family, there's this mentality of don't worry, don't feel bad, which is grief myth number 3. Don't feel bad, we'll do something else to make it better. But here's the thing, replace the loss treats relationships like they are, that you can substitute one relationship for another, that all relationships are interchangeable, that relationships are the same. But we know for a fact that when our best friend from childhood moves away, we can't replace her with another classmate. She's kind of similar, and maybe she likes some of the same things that we do, but she's not the same person. The relationship is not the same. So things like even pets, they have their own personalities. We can find soulmates in pets. So to say, don't feel bad that the dog died, we're going to get you a new dog, is just saying, it teaches us that we can fix grief. Society teaches us we can fix grief by substituting one relationship for another because they kind of look the same. And it's not real. It's just not real. And not only does it teach us to diminish our feelings about the first loss, to never grieve the first loss, but that we're forced to accept this substitute as okay. And so we're not really allowed to share our feelings about that either. And while we may love this new pet, this new person, this new job, this new playmate in a different way, it's still not the relationship we had. And so we spend the rest of our lives never grieving this first relationship that we lost, but also being forced societally, not actually forced, but to accept and to love and to cherish these new relationships that are coming in as replacements down the line. So replace the loss. I mean, this is with boyfriend. I mean, if you never grieve the loss of your first love, you will keep trying to find somebody to fit that role for you. If you never grieve the loss of your first dog, you will keep trying to fit different pets into that place for you, into that relationship for you. So replace the loss is really toxic because we forget. It helps us forget to grieve. And it just leaves us with these holes still. And that's not where we want to be with grief. So these are the 6 myths of grief, and I can link to the book below in the comments where you can find the 6 myths of grief plus a plethora of other tools to use. I've already linked to this podcast. that has the 6 grief myths in it. And these grief myths, they aren't bad, but they're not helpful in dealing with grief. And what we really need in the midst of our grief is helpful things that we can believe in, things that are true for us, and things that are realistic. So time magically healing us, so replacing the loss, somehow magically fixing the fact that we have lost. Grieving alone by ourselves, somehow magically fixing it. They're not fixes, they're not realistic. So I hope you enjoyed this Thursday Live segment. If you're looking for more in-depth about the 6 grief myths, my podcast is 100% free, and it comes out every Wednesday. You can find the link to this week's podcast, which is all about the 6 grief myths, plus some other cool stories from my life and the lives of others, in the comments section up here, down here. And I really encourage you to pick up a copy of this book. I absolutely love what the grief recovery method did for my life. So I'm so stoked to share that. Let's see, we've got some comments in here. Tanya says, thanks for the reminder that you don't have to stay strong all the time. This week's episode was really awesome. Thanks for sharing. Oh, Tanya, thank you so much. That made my day. And I'm glad to see you on here too. And I see Rajiv, one of my dear friends from high school, also has joined us to watch. Remember that this video stays on my page always, so if it's something you feel compelled to share with your network, you totally can, and that holds true for every live video I've ever done. So you can find all of them on my page. And with that, I will leave you, my dear grief growers, until next Thursday when we do our next live episode. As always, you can reach out to me on this Facebook page. You can private message me or post a comment. You can hang out with me in the Grief Growers Garden, which is a private Facebook group where we share stories and pictures and just like little doodles of life after loss, working through our grief together. And you can always email me at shelby@shelbyforsythia.com. I would so love to hear from you. Thanks so much, guys, and I'll see you next week.